Hey, all right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another Humpday Hangout, one of fire engineering's many events, especially this one, obviously, on Wednesday. Our show, Issues and Challenges in Today's Fire Service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, along with my good buddies, Chief Terry McGrath from Louisville, Chief John Salka. We're missing Chief Scott Thompson, is one of our regular cast of characters we have. Scott's out and about. I don't know if Terry, I think he's teaching or he's got another engagement going on. And then Chief Bobby Halton, the boss, he's I think he's fighting the flu. So we want to get Bobby back and get him feeling better. These Hump Day Hangouts are obviously a lot of fun for a lot of people on Wednesdays, but don't forget, folks, we remind you at the end, there's a ton of stuff out there, whether it's on, golly, Terry and John, let me see, fireengineering.com, Firefighter Nation, GEMS, FDIC, EMS Today, Fire Engineering Books and Videos, Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment, and everything else that they've got going on. There's great stuff out there. And don't forget, in the evenings to our viewers, the great podcasts that Fire Engineering hosts, that they post a variety of characters and some great people, and some great topics. So don't miss those. Those are in the evening. You can find all that stuff at fireengineering.com, kind of the landing page for a lot of stuff. The nice part, guys, about the web pages is, a lot of people, you get on there and you have to bumble around to find stuff. Fire Engineering, you can just scroll along the top and bing, bang, boom, it's all right there at your fingertips. Reminder for our viewers, if you have any questions for today, just shoot over to Twitter and send them our way. Just make sure you had hashtag FE Talk. And a couple of quick things before we get going here. John, Chief Salka, I cannot pass this up. We mentioned it in class the other day, but out of all the successful Salkas in the world, which there's a ton of successful Salkas in the world, all the children.
I know who you're talking about.
All right, so we got to announce it. Don't you have a son? You have two sons, or you have five kids, all right? You have three sons, two daughters. Two sons that are Marines, one active, and what I mean, James, what's the big news? Come on,
James was promoted to major in the Marine Corps last week or 10 days ago. Yep.
So we're very happy. Yep. Now explain. He's assigned to is it pronounced Marsoc? Marsoc?
He's in Marsoc. He's in Special Operations, and he's been there since he was a. Oh gosh, I don't think he was a sergeant in Marsoc. Yes, he was. So he's been a sergeant. And then he made lieutenant, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, and then he just made major. It's brand new, so he'll be in major for a while.
Oh yeah, but you know what? It's so.
But cool. They don't ship him out. They do leave him in Marsoc. When they get promoted in rank, they still stay in that unit because they get a lot of time and training invested in them. So they don't ship them back out to infantry or something like that, where it wouldn't be wasteful, I guess. But I guess you might term it wasteful.
Well, you and I talked about the other day. My son, the 6 years he did with the Navy, he was an FMF, a Fleet Marine Force Corpsman, that attached to the Marines, and that means he spends his whole career. If he stays in for 30 years, he stays FMF the whole time. But congratulations to Major
and
James
one more
P.
thing,
Salka.
and I did this. Since I was a battalion chief, I had gold oak leaves as a battalion chief in the FDNY, and that's what a major wears in the Marine Corps, gold oak leaves. So I dug through my old tray full of stuff and took two sets out, gave them to my daughter-in-law when she was up here visiting. And when she pinned him, when she put his first oak leaves on, they're the ones that I wore in the Bronx as a battalion chief. So that's pretty cool. So he's carrying mine.
God, yeah. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Well, hey, Terry, I wish you could have been with us, buddy. We've been busy. John and I have been traveling a lot, doing a lot of stuff. We were in among other places. We were in Warren, Michigan, right next to Detroit. And Jim, the host there, I mean, Warren, Michigan's a class operation, great fire department.
Great trip.
Oh God, they're great guys and gals there. And then we went to dinner, obviously, with the folks from Warren and the boys from Detroit. And
local boys.
Terry, I just sat like this, listening. I was at the end of the table just going, holy crap, Batman. I was at, the conversations, and what a great group. What a great group. But so anyway, and Terry, where District 7 is down just outside, District 7 Fire Rescue, just outside San Antonio. I was down there this week. My brother, Dominic, brought me down there, and another great day. What a great group, and great weekend, dinners and everything else. But John, Friday night after I had supper at the firehouse, I think you may have seen the post. I'm walking out, and this firehouse is so cool. They've got like a 3-inch hose that they cut the lengths. They have it. It's the thin red line fire, the flag, the United States flag. The hose is hanging on the wall with a pike pole. It's just awesome, gigantic flag made out of fire hose and all that. So I'm walking out, John, out onto the floor, and you know how Terry, we've always had, our risk management signs in a lot of places. We risk our lives a lot. Anyway, that being said, I'm walking. I took a picture. I saw this above the door leading out to the apparatus floor, and I was like, "Oh God!" I said that. You know how much all three of us, everybody on the show, we talk about. Every time you go out the door, there's a fire. Expect fire, expect victims. So I took a picture of this and posted it, and one of their guys makes them there. One of their guys makes them. Well, the next day, they signed it. And they gave it to me. So I got to fight. I don't. I mean, maybe up there. Yeah. Well, but anyway, thanks to District 7. That's so freaking cool.
Very nice. Very nice.
And what a great reminder for the troops. Every time you go out the door, expect fire, expect victims. Instead of this, it's just a false alarm or just a BS alarm or whatever, and so on and so forth. So
that was fun, Chief. I texted you the other day. So one of the attendees in that is the son of a very, very good friend of mine, Park, retired from Dallas Fire Rescue. And he had sent me that picture of you and his son, Preston, after that seminar, which was fun to see because I went to high school with Park. We were roommates. And I mean, I don't know, we've known each other for 30 something years or whatever, but anyway, that's cool to see.
Well, when it cool now, it doesn't make you feel old, does it, Terry? That,
Yeah, that kid. Yeah. No, it's that ship has sailed a long time ago. Hey, Chief, I want to jump in here real quick because the other day I saw a post on a Twitter that was referencing PSOB benefits, and they have altered PSOB benefits or amended PSOB benefits to make first responders eligible for that if it pertains to COVID. That's death or disability pertaining to COVID. I don't know the details, but I'm putting that seed in as many people's minds as I can. Chief Mark Lee in Garland had a death the other day of a 17-year member of his department, and I sent that tweet to him immediately. And I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I don't want anyone to miss out on the potential of qualifying for that benefit. And I want to make sure that at least if you hear it, Google it, ask some questions. That was a big player in Andy Allison's injury, and really provided some comfort and benefit to that family for the future. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there and make sure that anybody who might think you're in that scenario, please look that up.
Well, and one of the reasons we did the show a while back, guys, with our good buddy John, and Terry Homer Robertson, when he assisted chiefs in Fort Worth, is because all three of us, everybody, Bobby included Scott, we were kind of frustrated. Can you imagine? We're putting firefighters back to work after being off with COVID. Now, it's one thing, like I had it, I can't even make up a symptom for you. And my wife almost died from it. But we've got guys who had breathing problems, all kinds of stuff, in pneumonia, which if you had pneumonia breathing, you pretty much are guaranteed you had permanent lung damage. And we're just putting them back to work with no follow. And if you think workers' comp fights you on stuff now, guys, right? Can you imagine 10 years from now, it's going to be, oh, what do you got? Oh, they'll be rolling their eyes. These kids that weren't even in the workforce then will go, oh, we have another COVID claim. And the guys are going to be fighting for their benefits, fighting for their lives, because departments, chiefs, I'll just say it, throw it on them. They're running the show, did not do their due diligence to document and take care of their people, and that's why, Terry, that was so huge to have those guys come on and talk about the return to work physicals they do for those who have COVID. Just like you're saying, this is huge to know that the benefits are being changed, as it should be. So great point. So, okay. So our topic and Terry, when you and I talked about this, we brought up, because John and I just had this conversation the other day, when we were doing a class, and it came up at dinner with the guys and gals at District 7 down here in Texas about staffing, and you look at, John, you and I both still volunteer, so we never know what we're going to get. We never know if we're going to get 2 guys or 20 guys. And one of the points, John, you brought up, and Terry, I found this interesting, was when we talk about varying staffing levels, everybody gets hung up on volunteer versus career. But John, we asked it the other day, show of hands, and I did it the other day too. Show of hands, how many people run with 5 people all the time? And you look around, how many people run with 4 all the time? And maybe 1 hand or 2 hands. Who runs with 3? And it's amazing how many run with 2. And not that that's, we'd love to have 4, but I don't think we do our due diligence on training people on how to make the best they can with their staffing. But John, you brought up a point that I keyed in on, that this whole difference between career and volunteer. Okay, so there are some career departments out there, a lot of them that are running 3. Actually, the average in the country, to be honest, is 3 people that are running 3 people all the time. Your volley department, just like mine, Wichita West, with Ryan Fetcher's group here, during the day, it may be just 2 of us. At night, we're fighting to get people. I mean, there's like, we're loaded. I remember going to fires here. There wasn't an empty seat on the engine. We had 5, we could fit 5, and we have 5. If we could sit people in our laps, we would. There's times your guys roll out because you have the seats with 6 guys in an engine.
Right.
So,
right. And you look at a place like Louisville, which is the exception, the positive exception, right? They got great staffing, truck staffing, etc. Look where my son was down in North Charleston. Even though they say 4, it's not 4, it's 3 most of the time. 2 people in the front and 1 guy, my son, sitting in the back by himself, right? Now, we just had a run at Sapelima Grove an hour and a half ago. Only 2 guys got on the rig because it was for a serious MVA, so they rolled in case they needed the hearse tool or whatever. So we had a guy driving, Big Daddy driving, and 1 guy in the officer seat and nobody in the back. And that never, ever happens. And we do not have good staffing here. And that never happens, that we only have 2. And like you just said, a lot of career departments got 2, or maybe that 1 more, 3, and that's all they got. Every time they go out the door, no matter how serious it is, that's all they got. You get a call for a local volunteer fire department, resounded for possible structure fire. Even the wall feelers, even the guys that don't necessarily come right out, they jump up and you end up getting maybe a better initial response to some types of calls at some hours of the day. It's all variable, of course, but so yeah, it's an interesting point. Career versus volunteer, and as we'll talk about for the rest of the period here, there's a lot of variations, a lot of different times when people shine and don't.
well, and one of the things I know we all talk about, and like I said, Louisville and that area, Terry. I mean, Flower Mound, they run with good staffing. Grapevine does. I think Carrollton does. Coppell, everybody around you pretty much runs with very good staffing. And like John said, that's kind of, I'll be honest with you, it's not the norm when you talk about, you guys always running 5 guys in the tower ladders and, usually 4 in the engines, sometimes 3, but usually 4, and you have 2 on the ambulances, where some folks are out there with, we just had it where they have, I was asked this, what do you have in the stations? Well, we have 4 guys, 2 in the ambulance, 2 in the engine. Well, sometimes, sometimes we have 3, but we have to move guys over here. And when the ambulance has gone, at least 2 guys on the engine. So tasks wise, I guess maybe we should jump in there. There's only so much you can do. And I know a lot of people beat up on the transitional attack thing. So that being said, I've been in a situation before. I used the case at Trophy Club, Terry. At the time with 5 guys on duty, great fire department, great people, great chief right now. But you go to a full arrest, 3rd guy off the engine jumps in the ambulance, you're returning to quarters with 2 guys, the captain, the driver, and the engine, you catch a fire. You pull up, you have no other option. If you don't hit it from the outside, the mayor's going to fire your ass. You know what I'm saying? So, and so that's always been around if it's used at the right time and properly, just like everything else. You can misuse a PPV. I can hurt myself with a sledgehammer if I try hard enough. But so many places, it's knowing what you've got coming and who's coming. Terry is great. You could talk about this. As great as the staffing is at Louisville. I remember when I was there with you, I remember we had a good mobile home fire and I was in there first and I'm like, who's my first due? And it was Station 2. Station 2 to Creekside, the distance they got to travel. And I'm going, okay, it's going to be a little bit, because 1s and 3s were all on their own calls at the time, and 2s was next up. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made when you have even great staffing, but people are busy and you've got a distant company coming, right?
That's an excellent point to lead into, because if I sit here and think about 3 people on this panel, I consider our organization or this community to be blessed because of the staffing that we do have. I also consider us to be blessed because we have great relationships with surrounding departments. I also consider us to be blessed because we've got a lot of training, we've got great equipment, with all those sort of things. but nothing's ever perfect. You've got Chief Salka sitting down here who when I look at a video of FDNY, all I see is people. Like there's people everywhere, but I'm quite certain that he could unmute himself and say to you, there are many, many, many instances, fires or whatever, that he's been on and didn't feel like he had enough people, because we've all been there, whether you lead out in your volume apartment with 2, or you lead out in FDNY and within the span of 2 minutes, there are 27 people standing there. There's still a lot to get done and a lot has to happen. And there are also those times where someone's delayed, something's, that they pull up and they've got people hanging out of balconies or on fire escapes. And so there's a million things to do. And even though you have 20 people standing there, it's hard to get them all done. So I think number one, the challenge with staffing is be realistic about what your expectations are going out the door. We all could use and wish we had more people. It's just, there's a balance. We got to find the balance, and we may agree or disagree with what our city leaders or community or fire chief decides what are the best dynamics that we operate under, but you have to understand what they are, and then you have to plan accordingly, regardless of whether you're rolling out with 2 people at midnight or you're rolling out and have access to 27 people at midnight.
Well, and Terry, that's an awesome point, because John, you and I've talked about just what Terry said. When you were in the 18th Battalion, you roll out the door and you've got people falling out of your pockets per se. But there have been times you told me, oh man, we got there and due to a car blocking or 88 was already, there have been numerous times where you've got multiple jobs in the Bronx that you're going, okay, my second new engine is coming from a distance. Look at Rescue 3 on that fire where they made all the rescues when 88 was first due. They were coming from a ways,
And Terry's point is so well taken, because I remember somebody saying this once a long, long time ago. I've repeated it many, 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 many times, and it's about staffing. Absolutely applies to what we're here talking about. I said, you know what? Talking about 5 people on an engine, or 6, 5 firefighters in a lobster. I mean, do we need 5 people on an engine all the time? Really? In New York City, citywide, do we really need 5 people on an engine all the time? The answer is no, until you get a fire, and then you need 25. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter whether you have 1 or 2 or 5. Once there's a job, nobody has enough. So what's the issue? So what's the point? It comes down to now backtracking and saying, okay, so what are we going to get done first? I don't have to do that. I got a guy doing the roof, the outside vent, the hose line, the this, the that, because I got enough people. If you got half the amount of people, you have to pick the things that get done first and make sure they get done first, and then either wait for somebody else to get there, or then the guy's got to shift gears and go do something else. So that's the hard part. All the same jobs got to get done no matter where the building fire is.
How do you make the adjustment, John? And Terry too, John, example, you had 2 civilian rescues recently, not too far apart in South Blooming Grove, in your own district. So I've always said, okay, you're on your way home from the Bronx. I always just say this, where I used to joke about the Pez dispenser fire department, Terry, where they just keep chunking firefighters. They're just, when you think it's like the clown car, just when you think everybody's off the rig, more guys fall off the rig with gear. But then, John, you show up and you're in South Blooming Grove with great firefighters. But like you said, now the dynamics change, because it's a volunteer paid on call method, or this could be a career department where stations are just spread apart. We've seen that where they're 10 minutes. They strategically placed firehouses. I was at one department in Florida, great fire department, 12 stations or 18 stations. Every one of them set 10 minutes apart. That's how they're set. And they call them engine couples because they only have 2 people on them. Instead of, so you're hoping so-and-so gets there, not an EMS run, because they're an EMS run, then somebody's driving further just to put enough people together. So talk about that, John, just for a moment, the decisions you have to make compared to the Bronx, where I know what you order up when there's a 1075. I know what you do when you get there. Give me another 1-on-1, all that different stuff. Talk about tasks and prioritization when you pull up and you don't have 39 people coming. You know what I'm saying? I mean, first thoughts, Chief Salka pulls up, you got a fire, and somebody says there's a lady trapped in the back like you had, or the guy up on the second floor. When you have heavy fire, let's talk priorities. What are you thinking first?
Are you talking to me, huh?
Yeah, to John, what are you thinking first?
I hate to answer the question, because unless we have something, unless there's a glitch, unless there's a big bump in the road, if everybody's coming in on time and I got my first 2-engine truck rolling in and the second ones are coming or approaching, and you know what? It doesn't really matter to me. Doesn't really matter to me. I can have a building burning with nobody visible. I can have a building burning with fire on the first floor spreading to the second floor. I can have a building with 3 people hanging out the second floor windows. And we pretty much do the same thing all the time. We pretty much, matter of fact, in some of our bulletins, it says, nothing shall deter the roof man from getting to the roof. And meaning, if he sees somebody ready to jump, he tells them, stop, they're coming to get you. And it keeps going. He doesn't stop to help them. He gets to the roof. I mean, there's certain things that we have delineated, laid out in our tactics and procedures that are, because we have the amount of people we have, we can do that because he's not lying. Because at the same moment that he's saying, hold on, lady, or he might say, throw the kid. And he put the kid down and hand it to somebody else. But there is somebody going in with a hose line. And there is a guy going up the back, ready to jump in a ladder to do VES, to jump in a window. So it's always said it. I get the easiest job in the world, FDNY battalion chief, easiest job in the world. They send me 49, 59 people to do a building fire. And most of them already have predetermined assignments and tools and arrival sequences. And I sort of watch, you guys, not you guys, but people with any less number than that, people that are riding around with 2 or 3 people on an engine, you suddenly have to get involved. You have to say, engine 2, no backup line. I need you over here, and suddenly you have to start playing chess, that's a much more difficult job.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. So switch gears from the Bronx to South Blooming Grove. You pull up, you got
stretch a line. Stretch a line. That's what I say. Stretch a line. I don't know what anybody else doing. You and you help with that line. I don't care what they're doing. That's what I do.
And for our viewers, because we've got some folks that have 40 years in the fire service, they have some that have 40 days that are watching this show. That's where I'm kind of going with this, John, is the importance that we talk about. All 3 of us talk about all the time. And Terry, you've been doing it for decades there. About the only thing that's important on that pumper is the water and the hose. Everything else on there is extra. And I know we do EMS calls. We're in the EMS, we're pro EMS, but the only thing that's important is the water and the hose. And it depends on, and our success is how often we stretch the line, how well we stretch the line. We all watch the YouTube videos. We all watch the fire porn, and we all get frustrated going, are you kidding me? And John, how many times have you done this in class? Terry, we do this. We'll ask how many people have or still drive a pumper to fires. They raise their hands. Okay, you're turning the corner, you got fire blowing out the front. You pull up, what's the first thing you know? Set the parking brake. Yeah, what's the next thing? Throw it in pump. What's the next thing? Put it in drive. And you get out. And if you're safety conscious, yeah, we put wheel chocks. Then what do? Well, if we're up north, it's winter, we prime the pump. If not, both of us wait for somebody on the radio or somebody to say what? Start water, charge light, whatever. How long should that take? Well, and plus watching people pull a hose off and dump it on the ground, you could tell those that don't train, and all of us, all 3 of us believe, everybody that's on this panel, all 5 of us, we're just heavy into training. Training is the backbone. Stretch and line. Well, here's the thing. So we get jammed up, John. Let's talk staffing for a second. All right, we're talking.
Listen, before you even get into staffing, I got a question for the both of you to answer, right? So, because I've dealt with this question, not in actual situations, but in firehouse discussions and seminar discussions. So you're the chief, or you're a decision maker in a response district, in a fire department. So I'm making the numbers up, but it's the concept that's important. So you have 10 engines in your fire department, 10 engines. And like you mentioned earlier, the distance between the engines is 10 minutes, and you have 10 engines. So the distance between them is 10 minutes, and they have 5 people on them. Should you keep those 10-minute distances with 5 people because you get a lot of work done? Or should you go down to 3 and make more engines and put them in between? So, some people say, oh, we got 12 engines. How many people? Well, only 3 on each rig. I said, wouldn't you rather have 6 engines with 5 people on it? So when they get there, they can have an impact. There is no correct answer here because time is as important. The time it takes us to get there and start fighting the fire, that's as important as how many people we have. But you gotta have a balance there somewhere. And I don't know what it is. It might depend on what kind of buildings you have and what your occupancies are. But boy, oh boy, would you want 10 engines or 5 engines? 5 with 6 people, or 10 with 3?
Well, Terry, you do budgets there. Louisville's building firehouses like there's no tomorrow. And one of the things, Terry, I remember, it was a good idea. One of the guys came up and said, hey, we should move Station 4 to back up to the lake. that's the boat, right? The fours are the boat guys, right? And they run the boat calls all the time, just like San Francisco's has out the front, it's an engine company, out the back, it's the boats. And I thought, yeah, it's a cool idea. It can't work, because then, instead of a 360-degree response area, now we have the lake, but we have all this. The only challenge with that, John, is, and I agree with you, is okay, if I take my staffing, and Terry jump in there, minimum staffing is what at a particular firehouse. If it's 3 on the engine, and I took 2 guys to make more engine companies, now do I have the overtime to cover it? You know what I'm saying? The cost wise, because it's another firehouse with maintenance and electricity and fuel and all that. Maybe the quicker fix to that is I add more companies to our one alarm assignment, to these guys that run 2 engines in a truck or whatever, maybe on a report of a fire. Maybe you need to add the 3rd engine or get them coming quicker. John, how many times we talk about call early? You can always turn around. But Terry, you guys, we used to be teased by a neighboring chief on how heavy we ran in Louisville with staffing going to fire. And I've told people for years, the reason the Louisville Fire Department is successful, and John, you can apply it to the Bronx. The reason the Louisville Fire Department is successful fight fires is because they bring a lot of people and a lot of water to the fires. And my mentor, Eddie Enright, always talked about cover and contain, man. That's what he said, Rick, it's as simple as that. Cover and contain. Cover the building with as many firefighters, as much water as possible, and can contain it to the room of origin, the floor of origin, the building of origin. And you can't do that if you have a administration that chooses to run minimum staffing and don't send too many people to a call. John, we've seen it. Don't send too many people, because if we have an ambulance call, they're gonna be we'll wait and see if it's a confirmed fire, which drives me out of my mind when people, a lot of the volley departments do that, right? I'll wait till I get there before they call for help. And I'm like, you're just playing games with the lives of your firefighters and the people in your community when you say, wait till I get there. Who doesn't want to go to a fire? Who doesn't want to go to a call? I'd rather get halfway there. I'd rather get all the way there, Terry, walk down the street. It happened here. Burke Burnett calls for a structure fire. We got all the way there, walked all the way up to the building. Good fire. It was out. They were overhauled. Stood there with our tools, our gear, didn't do a thing. Stood there for a little while. Chief said, hey, they're going to cut you loose. You know what? Nobody was complaining. Nobody complained about going there and getting there. And you know what? There's not enough work. Like we've had to do, Terry, we've turned around and said, okay, guys, hang on. I think we got it. I know when we complain like, I can't believe they haven't called us yet. I can't believe they haven't boxes. I can't believe they went to a sec. Really, we're sitting here doing nothing. So, and John, I agree with you. Wouldn't it be nice? We call it the chess pieces, right? Wouldn't it be nice if you could move the chess pieces around and say, instead of 6 firehouses out here, let's have 8, and we put some in between here and spread our people.
Some places do that. They brown out. Jersey City used to do that years ago. They get 23 stations, and then some mornings they get 18 stations. They close 5 engines strategically, take the 3 or 4 people from each one, and bulk up the other engines. So but it changed day by day. But it's the same concept,
exactly. And we've got a city by us that they don't want to go unless it's a don't bother them. Don't bother their day, their nap time, unless it's a confirmed fire. Where the rest of us
my response to that is that time is not on anyone's side, right? So I've heard Chief Salka say many, many times, those aren't your minutes, right? Those aren't your minutes. They belong to the people that you're hired and sworn to protect, and what hopefully you sign up to do every day. But time is not on our side. We know from building construction, it's not on our side. We know from fire development, it's not on our side. The fire is not going to get better. I guess if you burn an entire block down, I guess maybe at some point it'll get better. But so, the perfect scenario or example that I think of here, and I tell our guys all the time, and it's grass fires, because in our wildland, the small amount of wildland interface that we have here, but it's challenging. And the other thing is that in Louisville,
you guys have a tree, right? You have a tree in Louisville. You've got a tree.
We have 8 fire stations, but only 2 brush trucks. So we send the brush truck as a first responder unit. So we'll send the first closest due engine, but we're going to send that brush truck because, I personally don't want people fighting grass fires in a $714,000 engine. But number one, it's going to take a while for your brush truck to get there. And if my philosophy on brush trucks is if you need 1, order 2, because by the time we get our 2 in place and get them operational, right, And so you're going in there with a couple of 100 gallons of water, which means you got to come out. And while you come out, whatever you just did is got erased. Because so now we say, all right, we'll step out to the next jurisdiction and say, hey, call Flower Mound, tell them we need a brush truck. Realistically, how long is that going to take? Because guess what? Their brush truck is not the closest one to our city limits. It's out in their rural interface area. So 15, 18, 20 minutes later is when they're going to show up. So I always tell people, hey, if you order one, just order two, because you're going to need it. And the amount of time, getting back to this original thing, it's time. And time will kill all of us when you're trying to mitigate something or get ahead of something. And Chief, when you came here and moved and pushed everybody into this mindset of call a lot of help and call it early, and it's fine to line them up on the curb, because when you need them right then. Always think of your next right. What's your next priority? What's your next alarm? Always plan for that. And there's a lot of logic in that. And so we can take the staffing question out of this, because if you don't have those resources, Highland Village borders us. Highland Village is a one-station department. When they go out for a one-alarm fire, Flower Mound Lewis will go with them automatically. We go with them. And we continue to push resources to
So
them.
you don't wait like a department I know of that they say don't call us unless it's a confirmed fire. You guys actually go.
Yeah.
I'm being sarcastic because I know that
right.
you guys go.
Yeah. So, but especially knowing you are automatically hamstrung in the city of Highland Village because of your scenario and the staffing, and whether they have five people.
Those are great firefighters at Highland Village.
Fantastic.
We
use them. They come mutual aid to us. But the point is that their next station isn't tied into their 911 center. So their 911 center has to make a call to another 911 center. That's like a 911 call. It's a couple of minutes. I got to give an address, and so it's time. And it's time to turn around and process through that 911 center. Then hopefully the engine that we're going to send you is the closest one to your city, because if it's not, I don't know where that one's coming from. But you've got to know what your scenario is. And if you don't get along with your neighbors, you should start there. Get along with them, go have dinner, sit down, figure this out, and provide assistance and ask for assistance.
Yeah, stop the whole one chief called the other chief a boogerhead 20 years ago and you guys don't get along crap. And my mentor, you both heard me say, Chief Tom Freeman, one of my many mentors, I love Brian. Chief Tom Freeman told me a long time ago, I talk about a bunch of classes. A good officer is the one that can predict his or her next alarm. Any mope in a white helmet can stand in the front lawn and burn to the ground with you in front of you. But a good officer, they know how to read the smoke, they know how to read the fire, they know what they need, they call early. John, I want to ask you, just what Terry said, this fits perfectly. So yeah, you show. So let me step this through. You're in the Bronx, you're in the 18th Battalion. Residential fire, what do they send to a residential fire in the Bronx for the initial alarm? How many engines and trucks?
It could be 2 and 2, or it could be 3 and 2.
So it could be 3 engines or 2 engines and 2 trucks with the battalion chief with an aide. And there's 5 guys in every pumper. There's or 6.
5 people on the pumpers and 6 people on the trucks. Right.
Yeah. So a lot of people coming. Officer gets there, says 1075. What does he get?
This is one of my favorite stories, because we do scenarios all the time. We ask people all around the country. We put a picture up of a fire, a good residential fire out a couple of windows in a 2.5-story frame, and people say, who needs more help? No, this group, no, this group, no, this group, no, this group, no. We'll need a little more help. We'll call some more people. And I said, what do you got coming? Guys, we got 3 engines in a truck and 4 people on each. We got about 12. We can handle that with 12. I said, let me tell you a story. I said, put that house in the Bronx, that same house in the Bronx. We sent 3 engines and 2 trucks on a box with the chief. Like I said, 5 people on the engine, there's 15, 2 trucks, that's 12, right? Get 27 people going. First engine gets there's flames out one window, a heavy smoke, 1075. We send a 4th engine, a 3rd truck, a squad, a rescue, a 2nd battalion chief, and a deputy. All on that single signal, 1075. That means we got something. And we augment it with, and what did I just say? Another engine, another truck, and really squad and rescue, another engine, another truck. It's almost like 2 more engines, 2 more trucks, another battalion, and a deputy boss. All just on 1075. Do we use them all the time? Absolutely not. But guess what? They're coming.
And what do you, so 1075, and this is my next question, part of the equation. So the 18th Battalion gets there. It's a 1075. You have all that stuff coming.
What's the first thing I say?
What's the first thing you say?
You tell me.
You turn to your
Additional
aide
engine
and
and
say,
truck.
what?
Give me additional engine and truck. I don't even care what's coming. Give me additional engine and truck.
Give me
Now,
one
I
and
happen
one.
to be part of it. You kid around about the Pez Fire Department, but I happen to have a big enough resource list that I can do that without going into. And I tell guys, don't worry about calling mutual aid. Well, number one, I don't know why people even have mutual aid. I don't know why it's just not automatic aid. You know, my little volunteer firehouse, we have automatic aid. We use them today. I don't have to call them. I wasn't even on the box. I was in the supermarket with my wife. By the time I got there, my engine was there and their engine was there and their chief was there. And you know what? It was running very smoothly. It was an extra.
Who made the grab at the not the last one for the second floor,
Right.
The one with the woman in the back? Who made the
Guys from
grab?
Washingtonville. Absolutely. Guys from Washingtonville. Yes, sir. And they helped us at the second one as well. Automatic response people. Yep.
So again, you've got the one scenario like Terry saying, look, it's about calling plenty of people. You can always, we say this, you can always turn them around. And then you have the Facebook fire chiefs that go, well, the more rigs you put on the street running code, the more chance you have for liability. You know, first of all, then that's a reflection of how poor of drivers you have. If they can't drive and respond to calls appropriately, you know, is there an added risk? Yeah, I guess so. But there's also an added risk to the people who are inside there who are unconscious or in the smoke or whose house is burning.
Oh, we don't want to use all our engines. If we only got 4 engines in one truck in town, if we tie everybody up, what if we get a fire? I said, you did. You got it right now. Send them. That's what you got all them resources for. Just backfill them. And it's a story for another day, but just backfill them. FDNY handles that. FDNY handles that. All under the dispatchers handle that. They get the big map in front of them. They see I'm using 4 engines and 3 trucks. They rotate them in. They bring them in and cover certain. They put an engine here and a truck there. Here in Orange County, I got to call them up. Monroe's got to call up. Washington's got to call up. South Blooming Grove's got to call up. We can all be at the same fire. We each have to call the dispatcher and say, put an engine in my house. Okay, put a truck in my house. And it's just crazy. They're making the guy that's handling the fire handle the coverage of the buildings as well, of the stations that aren't involved.
Well, Terry, that's what brought the box cards. That very situation John said to Denton County was, certain departments would whack out all the resources around them, to make up the staff they don't have. And then the next day they would do it totally different because there was no, John, you always say it's like the takeout menu at the restaurant. Let me have 5 of these, 4 of these, 3 of those. And tomorrow you order different stuff. There's no consistency. There's no thought process put in it. So we're banging out and wiping out one whole side of county and don't have coverage there. And we've got people over here.
And the point is, I think chiefs and even better than chiefs, young company officers, first arriving incident commanders. There's no chief on the scene yet. Some lieutenant shows up, captain, right? I think they would be more apt to call for more help or to not worry about transmitting the additional engine and truck or all hands if they knew that Louisville dispatcher is going to fill everything else in. I don't have to worry about the place being uncovered. It's when you harness them, when you shoulder them with that responsibility, they might actually call less people to the scene of an incident thinking, oh man, then I got to start filling back the stations, and they shouldn't even be thinking about that.
Well, and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, because I talk about this. I know for years there, you and I spent 12 together, but for years, I tell people all the time, it's pretty simple to figure out. A rookie in Louisville can tell you, if you say, so what do you guys send to a 1 alarm? Well, they'll say 3 engines, a truck, truck has 5 guys, an ambulance and a chief, and probably the safety officer, the captain, right, is rolling that way. And the chief the battalion chief has a captain who's driving them. Well, what's the first engine do? First engine attacks the fire. What's the second engine? Assures the first engine has a positive water source. Then they bring a second line, whether it's fight fire, backup, whatever. Third do is RIT. What's the truck do? Well, the officer is jumps. You got the 4th century search team. The driver is part of are the vent team, high or low, and the 5th guy is the outside vent man. What's the ambulance do? One of the guys, the guy riding past her jumps out, helps the first driver make his hydrant if he needs help. Second guy gets out, gets dressed, he's assignable, or he's uses the OV. If that hasn't changed, all those assignments are done and set in motion before you ever leave the firehouse. Now, am I still correct?
No, your recitation of that response and responsibilities is almost dead on. We've tweaked a couple of things, and this kind of dovetails into something that Chief Salka just said. We added another truck company, so we run 2 truck companies in Louisville, and so we amended our boxes to say a simple residential fire is that standard response with a couple of adjustments made to that, just tweaking it as we went along. But when we added that second truck, we now have a heavy box, what we term as a heavy box, and a heavy box are commercials and they're multifamily. And getting back to the brush truck scenario, if we light off a 3-story multifamily, especially in an unsprinklered that's over here, that second truck's coming from Station 6, Chief. So it's on a perfect scenario, that truck may have a 15-minute, response time or so. So we have a heavy box now, and on heavy boxes, we're sending both trucks to that because we know we need them. We know we need to get them in place before we bottleneck this thing up, and we want to get ahead of the game. So the argument is, well, if you got 2 trucks, we have redundant capabilities because we could fill out 2 one-alarm responses. And you know what? We will if we can, but we're not going to withhold from what we know is a 911 call for a fire in a multifamily or commercial building or something that's going to be very resource intensive and a high life safety hazard. We have the resources, we're going to move them. And then you know what? If the next one alarm comes in, then we'll call Carrollton and the colony and whatever else we have left. And we'll deal with it when we deal with it. We have a plan to deal with it. We're not going to roll the dice when that happens, but I think it's all a matter of being strategic about how you're operating.
Oh, it's awesome.
Do your dispatchers have any, what's the word? Do your dispatchers have any say in assignments? In other words, I always tell guys, the guy answering the phone at the dispatch office, they know when there's a fire. They hear that tone of voice. They hear the screaming. They hear the commotion on the other end. They know there's a fire. It happens in the Bronx. A dispatcher calls you up 1-8, I'm loading your box up. You got a job. They know it. And I wish every dispatcher was able to do that and say, hey, Chief, we're getting a bunch of calls. We're sending that second truck or whatever it might be. It's nice for them to give them some ability to have an impact, if not through the chief or however.
Well, and on those heavy boxes, on their initial size up, we start scaling back down, right? So we're gonna get ahead of the game and try to get time on our side or get a time advantage in this thing. But we're going to scale back down when it's not warranted. Chief, you remember Gwenna and Stan? You knew 100% before you left your office that you had a working fire.
Oh,
because
Stan,
they came
let's roll them now. Or Kelly would say you got a good fire. I mean, or Gwenna would say, you knew you had a job.
Yep, 100%.
You knew you had a job, but you said to get time on our side goes back to what John said, and it goes back to the seconds, John. And I always say, picture yourself, if you don't care about yourself, picture your husband or your wife, your mom, or your dad, or your kids laying in a bed in the smoke. And let's go tick, 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 and Terry, you just said, I love it because we were just talking earlier about how time kills us, right? With our responses, with everything. And then you just said something I actually said out loud. I love that. You go, we're trying to get time on our side. You're working to we got time on our side. We're sending a lot of stuff that we can cherry pick later. So now we don't need that versus now the clock, you know what, just take the clock and throw it off into the river because you've given up all that precious time that we need to make a difference with someone who's laying in there in the smoke or unconscious or not breathing. I said it, I was at a firehouse where the guys they pull out John and Terry with the remote to the overhead door, trying to click. And I brought him back in after they did it several times. I said, okay, sit down. I said, okay, ready? Hold your breath. 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 I made them hold their breath for 38 seconds. I go, that's how long it takes you to fiddle fart with the door opener. I'll get it fixed. 38 seconds. That's something they're holding their breath. They're not breathing that much longer. So that being said, time is huge on our side. It's the seconds you talk about, John. It's what you just said, Terry. But John, I want you to hit on, let's talk about this because we see it in classes all the time. Terry, you guys have already addressed it with your responses because dispatch wise, it was a big challenge back in 2000 when I got to join you, Terry, to get dispatch, to give them the power to be able to go. They couldn't go from an automatic fire alarm, John, dispatching, like they said one unit, an automatic fire alarm. If they got a report of smoke, they had to call the office and it was really silly. They had to call and get permission almost. And I'm like, now, if you get a call that says now they're saying there's a fire smoke, you automatically bump it up to one of them. You do not call nobody. And if a battalion chief gives you a hard time, then I'll talk with them. But John, how many times in class we do our scenarios? We talk about this. So staffing, go from the Bronx to South Blooming Grove, Wichita West, Louisville, whatever. Okay. Let's talk tasks. We're talking staffing. You said it's stretch a line. And how many times have we asked somebody if you pull up with an engine? Now, very few places, I'm sure the Bronx does it, Chicago, larger cities, pull up simultaneous with engine and trucks or engine at the same time. Even some of the big cities, there's an engine that pulls up first, and there's an engine coming behind them or a truck or whatever. Unless they're around the same house or they're at the distance, you know what I'm saying? Most of the time, there's a single company pulling up first. If you could, we always ask this question, John, if you can only do one thing, due to your staffing, you got, your staffing in wherever. All right. If you could only do one thing, you said it already, it should be stretch a line. But how many people say it's search because they've been pounding in their heads over and over and over again, life safety, life safety, life safety. And you and I are like, no. Life safety is stretching a line. You stretch a line first. If the place is on fire, our priority should be get water delivered to the scene of fire as quickly as possible. Talk about that, because but the discussion we have in classes where there's like an argument much about, well, if I only had 3 people and I pull up and there's someone inside, I should go search first rather than stretch a line. And talk about the importance of stretching that line again.
There's two sides to this argument, and I believe very strongly in both of them. I can't say that about too many things. I'm like a cement head when it comes to a lot of things. I believe on this side, and I think the other side is absolute nonsense. And that's a lot of issues in life and in politics and in the fire service. But this is one of those issues that I am squarely right in the middle on. And I know both of them are 100% correct, the people that want to do it. Now, I'm not saying you should be running and even thinking about a search. If there's a fire in a building and you pull up with an engine, if you don't stretch a hose line, you should play Monopoly and go directly to jail. Do not pass go. You know what I'm saying? Like that's ridiculous. However, having said that, I think the American Fire Service, career, volunteer, combination, heavily staffed, lightly staffed. I don't want to say we do a terrible job at search. I think search could be improved dramatically throughout the country. Maybe not in Louisville, maybe not in the Bronx, but I think in lots of places, search is almost an ignored topic. I think there are places that'll stretch 3 lines. They'll stretch 3 lines into a house fire before they put a 2-person search team in there that's not on a hose line.
And John, you've heard me say it, no disrespect. All 3 of us love the fire service more than life itself. Our families come first. We love the fire service. We love firefighters, but we suck at search and rescue. I say it all the time. We suck at 2 things. We suck at reading people. We stereotype and we pigeonhole and we bully people, and we suck at search and rescue. Everything
from a hose line is absolutely mandatory. It's absolutely the primary tool. It's got to be stretched and action taken at a house fire that is, I don't want to say that's occupied, because if it's a house fire, it's occupied, as far as I'm concerned, right? When we're all done, we might be able to say it wasn't occupied. But short of that, once you address that, once you get an engine company with a hose line stretch and a good water supply, whether the second engine helps them with that or they established it themselves with a hydrant right there, then we got to start thinking about search too. We got 3,000 people die every year in America. 3,000 people. We're down well below 100 firefighters dying. And I know it's different groups of people and it's different priorities, but boy, we just lose our minds if it goes over 100 one year. We're like, holy cow, it's the end of the world. 100 firefighters died this year. And most firefighters, most officers, and most chiefs don't even know how many civilians die every year, and it's 3,000. So all I'm saying is absolutely, I agree with you 100%. That's why everybody has 9 engines and 2 trucks. So 12 engines and 4 trucks, because you need engines. You got to put the fire out.
Well, and whether you have a truck, we've said this, whether you have a truck, we use the example how engines do engine work in New York City and trucks do truck work, right? They don't, like you said, there's truck guys that don't even know.
Cross. Right.
The truck guys that don't even know that engine guys carry water, and all that. But Terry, it's the same thing in Louisville. The truck guys concentrate on truck work, but you guys run a lot of automatic mutual aid, and you have to cross train. You may, as an instrument, you may get in before the BC, turn around and go, engine 5, when you get here, I need a search, which normally that would be, truck 6 or 7, you know what I'm saying, where everybody's got to be trained in it. But so I've always been the one, and I used to get funny looks, Terry, when I would just say nothing more on the radio and go, Louisville from command, go ahead. All right, the progress report. We got 1 line on the fire. We got primary search underway. Roof's being open, and so on and so forth. I'll get back to you a second. I'm waiting to hear on my primary search. And that was a little prod for them to go, oh, and then I would ask for a second. And sometimes guys would look at you and go, really? I go, did we search the building? Well, the fire, I know the fire's out and the smoke. Did we search the building? Just because the smoke is out there now doesn't mean someone wasn't in the smoke beforehand. You know what I'm saying? And we still have to, I don't want to be the one in the magazine that has someone between a sofa and a windowsill that we missed. That's how, right? We talk about that every time we go out the door. Every time we go out the door, every time we go out the door, there's a fire. All right. Every time there's no fire unless we say there's no fire. All right. So every time we go out the door, expect a fire. Right. When we get there, there's no fire unless we say there's no fire. All right. There's no one in the building unless we say there's no one in the building, and it's not out unless we say it's out. We've said that forever. And I think that's a very safe way to run things. Every time you go out the door, expect that there's going to be a fire. Till you get there, go, there's no fire. And if there's a fire, expect someone to be in the building, unless you go, you know what, there's that end up being in the building. But John, I think I'll say it. I think we suck at search and rescue. First of all, we suck at training our people on how to stay oriented. I know how passionate you are about that, staying oriented in a room, how to search and reduce or zero visibility. We ask people all the time. So when's the last time you said it? If you're a company else, you're not training your guys how to search in a smoke-filled building, you're not doing your job. And then we put in there, okay, so when's the last time you did a zero or reduce visibility search? And from then. And again, think about it. You go, okay, Chief Salka, you're telling me you want me to crawl into that building, a building that's on fire, a building that's under demolition, because everything put in it to hose up, leaving the smoke and flames. And you want me to go in there and we talk about and not use the 5 watt that God gave everybody else to use. I have no sight. I have no smell. I have no taste. I have no hearing for the most part. I have no feel of the gloves. If I showed up at a construction site, they sent me home with a white cane and a CNI dog. When you're asking me to crawl to a burning building and search for the scene of fire and any potential victims with no use of those, tell me that training the basics is important to search. But if we're not even going to assign people to search, don't even talk about that. Search has to be done, and we are search poor. We are search while fire's out, and we're good. And you know what? We search for people, we search for fire. But I think you're right. So let's talk. I think we're all in agreement. Very first task, no matter your staffing, should be whatever you have to do. If you have a 2-member engine, you should be trying to do whatever you can to deliver water to the scene of the fire. If that's all you got to do, through a window, whatever you have to do. If you're able to go interior, then right. I mean, I think attacking the fire and getting in there is critical. It only takes one person to vent on the backside or do what you got to do, and get in there and search. But I think the challenge is, guys, for these departments that don't have the staffing, and that's why I brought us back to South Blooming Grove. You don't know. You can end up with 6 guys at night on the engine. You can have 2 guys during the day and 2 guys from Washingtonville and 2 guys from whatever to put together what you need for that crew. Stretching water has to be an absolute priority. And I think followed by vent and search. Those 3 things, don't you agree? Those 3 things have to be done at every smoke in a building call to every fire out a window call. Attack, vent and search. Those 3 things have to be tied together. And I think the challenge is, guys, how do some of these departments accomplish it with minimum staffing? It's easy. It's easy to talk about, and we have, John, you pull up, 88 goes to work, 45 goes to work, 48 goes, all these different, the trucks pull up, there's all these different guys. But I always say for the rest of the fire service, what suggestions do you have, Terry or John, for those that aren't running 5 and 4-member companies when it comes to completing tasks on the fire ground? Is it strictly automatic aid or mutual aid, or is it get more people there quicker, or is it training issues or prioritization? What is it that we need to tell guys to be successful?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's all of the above. And so we got to be realistic about this. But if I'm of the opinion, and this is something, Chief, you used to preach to us constantly, which is put water on the fire. Like that whole, do we put water on fire or do we search? And putting water on the fire is saving lives. You are 100% saving lives. Even if that is an uninhabited building, you are saving lives, because at some point, whether you are a heavily resourced career department or you're a volunteer department, someone's going to go through that building, or you're slowing the progress, saving the time, trying to get that time back on our side, that we're maintaining the structure of a building that allows people to search or whatever. So to me, that water is 100% the top priority. I think you could debate, and I don't know who's right or who's wrong on any of it. I think you've got to look at your scenario, and you've got to come to the realization that this is what I'm capable of doing, let's say in the first 5 minutes. And these are my objectives in 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes if you're a rural department or understaffed or whatever the case may be. be realistic about what your expectations are, but you got to look at your resources and 100%. You've got to rely on other communities. We just went through our annexation, chief, of Castle Hills on Monday.
I saw
We're now
that.
a population of 127,000. We gained like 18,000 people overnight. Now we've provided fire protection for them, but we have 8 stations, 2 trucks, 6 engines, 5 medics. We got a battalion chief. We're putting a second battalion chief on. We got an EMS captain. So we've got resources, but you know what? We've got automatic aid and mutual aid, and we pick up the phone and call. And our guys, right, chief? You put scanners in our stations a long time ago. Hey, listen to what's going on over here. I want our guys listening to what other people are doing. I want them listening to, I love it when a guy calls and says, hey man, Flower Mound's got a big fire working over there, right? So I'm sitting at my desk doing all the boring stuff, ordering sweatpants and all the stuff that I do. And I turn my radio on because I'm going to listen. But I think the staffing issue, if every one of us had 4-man staffing, I can almost guarantee you, what would we be talking about today? 5-man staffing. So I think it's always going to be an issue. You can always make an argument for it, but the realistic thing to do is understand what your limitations are and then start chipping away at improving your service through recruitment. Obviously you're always asking for more resources, but partnerships with your other municipalities, other cities, and things like that.
Well, and we had a comment.
Those are great points.
Go
Those are great points that Terry just made, and I just want to reiterate them before I forget, because I will. But there's 2 things he talked about. I mean, time can be improved. You can reduce the time it takes you to get there, which will reduce the time it takes you to stretch a line, which will reduce the time it takes you to conduct a search. All your operations get done faster when you get there faster, right? So how do you get people there faster? Well, another thing I heard suggested one time was, like in the FDMY, all of a sudden you hear beep, boop, engine, ladder, battalion, in that order, just about that slow. I said, the minute you hear beep, boop, everybody should be up walking towards the apparatus floor. And if a minute later it goes engine and doesn't say ladder and battalion, then the truck and the chief can go sit back down and finish their lunch. Instead, it goes off and nobody moves. Everybody waits to see who it's for. And then they all get up. Right off the bat, we start with a 5, 6, 8 second delay. We institute our own delay just by not immediately moving, So that's one thing. As far as your assignment, now you can make your assignment a little bit bigger. Terry, you said that you made them heavy boxes now. You got trucks going on, multifamily and then commercial and stuff. And you already said it. You can do it with automatic response. You don't even have to rely on the first dude in captain or even the chief just saying, start out that second tile out on this box. You don't even have to. It can be automatic. If it's from here to here on this side of the city, you start Flower Mound's truck out that way. If it's on this side of the city, you start whoever you got over there. This is all stuff that can be done all ahead of time. So you can bulk up. You can make every dang box. You can say every structural fire in Louisville or Hooterville or Westernville is going to have 2 trucks. No matter where we got to get them from, we want a second truck coming. And you can do it. And then you can speed up the other stuff in town with training and with, letting people realize, getting company officers, they'll get it done. You missed running 48 engine. When I got on the rig, we left. That's how he did it. Willie was always ahead of me, but when I got on the rig, we drove out the door. And one run, one night, we left one guy. Everybody else was on the rig because they knew we'd turn out fast. Just a couple of easy things can get you to the fire faster and get you a bigger, better assignment. And none of them cost a nickel.
Well, exactly, Terry, you saw the challenge we had. And me, I was like, if I was going to wait for everybody else in Denton County to come up with box cards or agree on automatic mutual aid, we'd still be talking about it today. Okay, so what do? I said, screw you. If you're not going to call us, we're going to call you. So we added companies to our run cards. And I'm like, now these firefighters and these surrounding departments are going, well, why don't they come to our fires? We're always going to their fires. Well, I did the same thing in Coeur d'Alene. You know what? You're not going to call us. I really don't care about that because my concern are the residents and businesses in my jurisdiction. To be honest, that's your job. That's your job to take care of your people. So if I have to call you in with an engine, a truck, or extra people to help us to be better at what we're doing, to augment what we have, I'm going to do it. And if you don't want to do it for your people, screw you. And all 3 of us see this today where departments, it's like, we're going to be like 1,000 years old before people get run cards or box cards or automatic aid stuff in place because they don't do it. They're like, Well, we got to wait for, what are you waiting for? You're going to wait. You're going to try and get people that can't agree on terminology on the fire ground, can't agree on what tools to carry. They can't even wear their bunker gear at time. You're going to try and get them to agree on an automatic aid response or boxer. Just freaking do it and be done with it and get the help coming. You know, get to help. You know, I just don't get sometimes the egos and the stuff out there, and guys get butthurt over it. I'm like, stop, grow up, act your wage, and get people coming to your calls. Go ahead, John.
And you know what happens, and it's a shame, and it's really nobody's fault, and it's really, I don't want to call it unsolvable, because I'm amazed every day at things that get solved and solutions that people come up with. Some of these young people come up with some great ideas, but what happens is we're stuck in the old structure that's 100 years old or 200 years old of all these little fire companies and these little fire departments. Even the Dallas, what do you call it? The Metroplex there, right? How many fire departments are there? Name, give me a number.
Oh God.
There's
A couple
gotta
hundred.
be, yeah, I mean, just within, I don't know, there's probably 27 in Denton County
So
alone.
there's a county right there, 27 fire departments. Don't you think it could be run better if it was a Denton County Fire Department?
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Like, forget the county name, and we just don't do that. In New York State, it's illegal. You can't even do it in New York State. There's only like 2 county police departments, and there's no county fire departments because it's because of the way that they structured the state constitution. But the point is, we're still stuck in the old framework of the old volunteer companies and the small little, one city had a paid department paid, and nobody else had anything. So everybody stays separated with their own little fiefdoms, their own chiefs, their own training division, their own color scheme. And we're stuck in that forever. I don't see that ever changing. But could you imagine if you took 27 fire departments, combined them, made a chief of department, had a deputy chief in each of the 27 places, and had run cards that included everybody and relocating and resources and built a training center? Wouldn't it be wonderful? But instead we have these smaller units that, 6 stations, 10 stations, 12 stations that have to interact with each other.
Because
that's the barriers.
Because we have these people that have spotlights on their trumpets that are allowing their
there's 3 of
gigantic
us
head
sitting
to
here.
get
There's
away.
3 trumpets sitting here. You know what I'm saying? So
Right. And I tell this story all the time. When I was in Darien Woodridge in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, you heard me say it, John and Terry, we thought about it. I could show up at an automatic fire alarm and there could be a white over lime green battalion chief, a white over lime green pumper. There could be a white over yellow tower ladder, a white over red heavy rescue, and a red pumper, all at the same fire alarm from 3 or 4 different departments. And you know what? Nobody cared. You could get there and another chief could say, "Hey guys, I'm here. You got nothing. It's a false activation home. Hey, thanks, chief. See you on the next one." Nobody gave a shit.
my son does the same thing in South Carolina. He goes on boxes with Charleston and with the other Lady Island or something like that. And it all works. I had the idea about a month ago, which got shot down by the first 2 people I talked to. I said, right here in Blooming Grove, why don't we make it a town fire department? Not call it a town fire department. We can do it with fire districts. Why don't we combine Southbury Mills, Washingtonville, and South Blooming Grove? Why don't we take those 3 departments? We work a lot together. Why don't we call it the Central Orange Fire District and put everybody together, make it one place? They got 2 stations. They got 2 stations. We got 1 station. It'd be a 5-station department with 3 heavy rescues and 2 tower ladders and 6 engines, and nobody will go for it. Nobody wants to take Washingtonville off their rig or South Blooming Grove or give their chief's helmet up and be an assistant chief under somebody else, But if guys would start thinking like that, I think that opens the door to a lot of improvements on response times and assignments and covering positions and things of that nature.
Oh, and we got, so we had early on, we had Michael MC respond about that their pumpers cannot respond in an urban or suburban area unless they have 4 on board, which that works for a lot of career departments. And there's even some volunteer departments, but on the other side of that, not everybody can do that. So if you can do that, God bless you. And that's a great idea. And we had a Hunter commented about the difficulties sometimes with dispatch, like we talked about, where they have to get permission, have to do this, instead of letting them do their jobs. But one of the questions, and we've talked about this all the time, but I think Hunter wanted to hear it, and we see it as well. The question was, we'll do this, we'll finish up our program with this. What are your thoughts on the one-man trucks? Okay, there are a lot of places that all they can do is they have one guy in the firehouse. John, you've talked about it. They do the maintenance, they do this, they do the check, and what a call, because they drive this scene and they have the volunteers, the panel call, they show up in their personal vehicles and then they staff everything. I know it's not the best scenario, but in some areas, due to budgets and everything else, that's all they could do. So it's about getting the engine to the scene and getting the off duty, or not off duty, but the volunteers there. It's almost like the public safety thing, Terry. You see a lot in Michigan where, there's one person on duty and they get to the scene and the cops get there, that are public safety guys, and they have turnout gear and air packs. And I was just at a place, John, you and I were just at a place next door, and they're very successful. They have no issues with it. And I'm like, holy cow, if it works, it works. So I guess thoughts, I mean, it would be great to have 4 people everywhere, but any concerns that pop out with,
truck? Go ahead.
I think that's a perfect example of somebody looking at what is my situation and what works best and make it work. When I read the comments, the first thing that comes to mind, right, is somebody with a town or a city go, well, I can't have a liability and right, because you're always going to get that thrown out at you, or you're not allowed to do that because, like Chief, remember when people said that you couldn't take someone for a ride in your fire car, but this is an instance where, I mean, is this perfect or work for every organization? I don't know, but I can tell you that somebody's thinking right here. All right, so how do I I got to solve a problem. So that's not off the table. And I think it's worthy of discussion. And I certainly see a lot of merit in that. Obviously, you got to do it safely. Obviously, you got to put, but there's something to be said for efficiency. And so why do I want to volunteer, right? I mean, you tell me, you two could go to a fire station, get on a rig, go to a call, and a volunteer drove by the call to get to the fire station, to get back on the rig and go to the call, something like that. So I think this is a perfect example of having to, or trying to solve a problem. And I think if it works, it works.
Well, I agree. It's and you can't fault anybody. I think you got to give people credit for trying to deal with a problem. So maybe they lived for 5 years with 3 engines and no truck, or they just got a truck, or maybe, gee, it's always been that way. We just got the one. I mean, I've been to, and you've been to, Terry, I'm sure you know plenty of places where that's it. They get a 1-person truck. Even career departments. We got 5 guys on duty, 3 guys on the first engine, 2 guys on the rescue, or 6 guys on duty. And the last guy, he drives the truck if we have a job. And I'm saying to myself, so 2 questions, brings 2 questions in my mind. Why do you have a truck? If you had 20 square miles of private dwellings, you don't need a truck, okay? You can do most truck work with tools off an engine, right? If you don't have multi-story buildings, if you don't have apartment house, if you don't have, the city hall or the courthouse or something, if you don't have a physical reason for a truck, almost all truck duties can get done out of a squad or an engine or a damn van if you wanted to, right? So that's number 1 question. Oh no, we got lots of high-rise buildings. We get the county seat, we get the office building, we get the courthouse. Well, you know what? If you do have a physical need for a ladder truck, then you get the physical need to get your ass downtown and talk to the mayor and the city council and get some funding to at least have 2 people on that ladder truck. If the ladder truck is really required physically for the types of buildings you have and they're built. Now, if you're just using it because you want to have a truck and you think it'll just better round out your fire department, then maybe it's a pipe dream. Maybe you really don't need a truck then. Maybe that 3rd person, that 6th person would be better on the engine. And I'd ride the engine with 4 instead of riding it with 3. And like Terry said, call a truck from the neighboring department. Call them to run their truck in it, and you can have a more efficient engine. So, and for whoever's listening right now, there's probably 9 other guys listening that have 9 other variations of the answer for that problem. Which and they all probably have some merit.
Right. And, the question's always been, well, so if 3 guys respond to the engine, 1 responds to the truck, at least we're getting a toolbox to the scene. Sometimes they get there, if there's 2 in 1, they're just, it's deliver the rig to the scene. So whoever else gets there has all the resources at their fingertips. Because
not a bad thing to have it there. Absolutely not a bad thing. No.
Yeah. So we've got all the tools and reasons. We have the big toolbox on the scene, and as people are arriving, they have the initiative because you can't fit everything on a pumper sometimes.
Well, sell your damn pumper, get acquainted with a big compartment of hose. And did I say that?
There's well, so Terry, I don't want to hit you up again because those were kind of awesome. If we're going to look at closing comments on staffing, just what you said. I guess, John, last thing, Terry just did a great job describing about prioritization. Closing thoughts on staffing in general from Chief John Salka. Just ideas or thoughts, or just if you're,
Well, two quick thoughts. I've never seen a fire engine put a fire out. That's number one. Okay. You got to have people. You got to have people, and you got to have enough people. We all went through it already with the volunteers. The bell rings, the siren blows. You don't know what you're going to get, but the siren is blowing, and the pages are going off to try and get some more if you can. If you're the career department, small, medium, other than that, obviously you want to try and get more people if you can. Certainly the trend for the past 50 years is downward. It's not upward, maybe except for Louisville, but everybody else in the world. New York City's closed 6 engine companies since 9/11. Closed 6 engine companies since 9/11. And, so having said that, I think Terry brought up, and so did you, Rick, a couple of nice, there are solutions to staffing problems. There are solutions that don't necessarily require you to hire more people or build more firehouses. There's other ways to get more people. A lot of creative departments, Newburgh, right here near me. First thing they do is page out people and call them back. And a lot of guys live right in the neighborhood. A lot of guys live right in their town. And boom, they staff an engine and truck right away with off-duty guys, instead of calling somebody else in to stand by. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Mutual aid, automatic aid. Another thing we didn't mention. What's the best thing about automatic aid from the fire chief's perspective? What's the best thing? ISO. You have automatic aid. Those stations and those engines and trucks count as yours when you get your ISO rating. If you have automatic aid, that's big for some people.
Well, and I think it comes down to, my closing thoughts are exactly with that. Just, it comes down to who's running the show, and if you can set egos aside and sit down and do what's best for your community and go, okay, let's talk about our responses and how we respond and what we respond with. And are we sufficient? Are we doing a good job with what we're doing for the citizens out? John, you always say it, and Terry, them, for those people out there. Are we doing our due diligence? Are we doing everything we can to be the best for them? And if we have to start inviting others to our fires ahead of time and all, so be it. So, I think it's, you have, I guess the bottom line is sit down, look at how you're responding with what, from apparatus to staffing to what you have available resources wise, both within your own jurisdiction and outside for automatic mutual aid, and make the adjustments to do what you can to be the best you can for the people that live and work in your community. So, John, email if they want to get a hold of you, buddy.
Chief John Salka at gmail.com.
And Terry, buddy?
You can get me first initial, last name, T. McGrath at cityoflouisville.com.
And I'm Chief Lasky at gmail.com. I don't want to have us sign off without a couple quick mentions here. One is FDIC is just around the corner. Start getting your rooms booked, start getting your classes picked out and everything else, or you're going to miss out. One of the other things is today is Fire Engineering Magazine's birthday. It is their birthday. The National Fireman's Journal was created in 1877. Fire Engineering Magazine has been around since 1877, which is pretty freaking cool. So happy birthday to Fire Engineering. So
happy birthday.
Our next show, and we'll have Chief Scott Thompson, Chief Bobby Halt back with us, is December 15th. Again, we mentioned it early on. You can always catch some great Humpday Hangouts on Wednesdays, the podcast at night. You know what? Just go to fireengine.com and look at the top. You'll see every website for all the resources that we talked about earlier, all the different websites. In closing, we always ask you to please keep the men and women in our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. And remember, never forgetting means just that, never forgetting. Be safe and God bless you. Thanks for joining us, folks.